Right, let's start with a bit of breaking news this morning. And the Prime Minister will welcome Ukraine's President Zelensky to Downing Street later this morning.
Well, the meeting follows a virtual call on which European leaders urged Donald Trump not to strike a one-sided peace deal with Vladimir Putin during their meeting in Alaska tomorrow.
Sir Keir Starmer has also warned that any deal must protect Ukraine's independence.
Well, here's what President Trump told reporters ahead of that meeting.
If the first one goes okay, we'll have a quick second one. I would like to do it almost immediately, and we'll have a quick second meeting between President Putin and President Zelensky and myself if they'd like to have me there. And that would be a meeting where maybe it could be absolutely work. But the first meeting will not work that out. Certain great things can be gained in the first. It's going to be a very important meeting, but it's setting the table for the second meeting. I think the second meeting, if the second meeting takes place, now there may be no second meeting, because if I feel that it's not appropriate to have it because I didn't get the answers that we have to have, then we're not going to have a second meeting.
All right, let's get more with political commentator Charlie Rowley, who's here. Morning, Charlie.
Good morning.
It has to be said, I mean, all the language here is very positive.
It is, and all eyes will be on that summit on Friday between President Trump and President Putin, in the hope that after almost 3.5 years, more so, that this conflict will come to an end. Now, how that comes about, who has to cease land, that is what is leading the headlines. President Zelensky has been very clear that he doesn't want to give up any territory. He doesn't want to cede territory to what was a hostile, illegal war, an invasion by Russia. So how do they compromise in a way in which brings that fighting to an end, where there have been thousands of troops on both sides, it has to be said, who have lost their lives, on top of all of the civilian casualties. One can only hope that this meeting, where there hasn't been a meeting before between Zelensky and Putin, President Trump has tried to suggest there in that clip that you just showed that they could have a quick meeting, or they'd have a meeting after the meeting between President Trump and President Vladimir Putin, including Trump, if they want him there, for good measure. But Zelensky and Putin haven't met. So, you know, have we seen a lot going on in the background where they are at a point where they can just meet and agree something quickly? So have there been agreements on both sides and we're just building up to this Friday summit? Or could we see President Trump pushing Zelensky too far, suggesting that he's got to give up land, maybe, or Ukraine have got to cede territory, when the coalition of the willing, that's the European countries set up by Sir Keir Starmer in joint cahoots with the French President Macron, where they've been firmly and squarely behind President Zelensky. If he doesn't want to give up territory, then it might be that there's no deal at all. We'll just have to wait and see.
I mean, the Europeans yesterday on that call seemed cautiously optimistic when President Trump was talking about the deal tomorrow. That meeting between himself and Putin is going to be about a ceasefire, not about a land swap, because we had been hearing that a little bit earlier on in the week. Obviously, the fear is that something would be agreed between the pair of them that then Zelensky couldn't possibly agree to.
I think that's absolutely right, and that is the worry, because a lot of people, a lot of commentators and a lot of countries, rightly so, have said that you can't agree a way forward for Ukraine without having Ukraine in the room, and that seems perfectly reasonable to me. But you would hope that there is one man who has put his whole political career and his credentials on the line as being a deal maker. This is Donald Trump. I think he's quite clear and quite keen to see a resolution on Friday after his intervention.
What do we make of this meeting in Downing Street today? Why do we think that is happening? I mean, is it trying to send a message that Zelensky, well, he might not be involved in the meeting tomorrow directly, but, you know, he is a figure who is being listened to by world leaders?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think, look, you know, we've had, it seems to me, parallel proposals running side by side. So you've had President Trump, who sort of said on his first days of coming into office that he would have ended the war in Ukraine on day one. Now, it's obviously taken a bit longer than that. So there's been the President Trump's review of it all. There's been his process and the progress that's been made. But then there's also been the European way of trying to deal with it. So that is through the coalition of the willing. And you'll remember that after, obviously, the big bust-up between Zelensky and President Trump in the Oval Office, it was the European allies that rallied rallied around Zelensky. He met the king, of course, Zelensky, and he was sort of surrounded by European allies to say, don't worry, we're on your side, and we'll help you get through it. So there have been two different kind of strategies of how to get to this point, but ultimately it's President Trump that seems to have got the breakthrough with getting Vladimir Putin to the table. He sent his own envoy, Steve Witkoff, to try and do those negotiations in Russia. But President Trump has been very clear. Look, if there is no ceasefire, if there is no resolution at the end of Friday, then Russia will suffer very severe sanctions, I should imagine, as part of the way in which to get them back around the table and to, as a punishment for not being as open as maybe President Putin has suggested that he is to ending this horrible conflict.
OK. Charlie, thank you very much. We'll see you in the next hour.
Using the internet without a VPN, a virtual private network, is a bit like taking to the road without car insurance. All it takes is one unlucky moment to cost you a lot of cash. This video's sponsor is Private Internet Access. They are the VPN to help keep you safe. Click the link in the description below to find out why over 30 million people have downloaded PIA to protect themselves online. A virtual private network is an app that hides your IP address and helps keep your data private. When you're browsing the internet at home, you give up a large amount of data to businesses, to shops, and indeed to social media giants too. Hackers have the ability to steal your personal data with ease, including sensitive information such as passwords, keystrokes, and even your personal photos. Private Internet Access helps protect your personal data by encrypting your internet connection to keep your data out of the hands of cyber criminals. And it's not just hackers either to be concerned about. Information can be censored too. When Canada passed their C-18 bill, social media giants decided to ban news content on their platforms. But PIA can protect your ability to consume the news and content you love. Private Internet Access is available for Windows users, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and you can use one PIA subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices. And we've got a huge GBNews discount for you too. Click the link in this video's description and you'll get a massive 83% off PIA. That's under £2 a month, the price of a coffee, and you'll get an extra 4 months completely free on top. Also, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee too. Visit piavpn.com/GBnews to start protecting yourself digitally today.
In the meantime, let's get the take of foreign policy analyst Tom Close-Pritchard, who joins us now. Good morning to you, Tom.
Good morning.
What do you make of the language, the tone ahead of the meeting tomorrow now? It does seem to have changed somewhat.
Yes, well, I mean, it's a very sort of optimistic tone, I think, from the Trump White House. I mean, my advice to the president, if he wants to take it, would be that Ukraine is gaining the upper hand. They've been extremely successful militarily. Operation Spider's Web, hitting military targets inside Russia, was a massive success. And there's an awful lot of scope for economic recovery and economic success after the war, and that Russia is, frankly, an economic basket case. So Mr. Trump needs to bear this in mind when he sits down with the Russian president.
We're also hearing reports this morning that Trump is set to offer Putin rare minerals or access to rare earth minerals as an incentive to try and end the war in Ukraine. And that will make a lot of people very uncomfortable, especially the Europeans, because it looks as though the aggressor is being rewarded here.
Yes, that's completely right. It's extremely worrying when, if there is a situation whereby Russia is being rewarded for its aggression, whether it be through minerals, whether it be through Ukraine being urged to cede land, and they're being urged to cede the Donbass, for example. This would be a huge, huge error. In my view, it has strategic value, but when it comes to the minerals and so forth, this would be considered a win for Russia, and that's just not right given the circumstances.
Is the balance of power here slightly different in terms of... I mean, I wonder how pushed Trump is by the fact that Europe as a bloc is behind Ukraine and certainly doesn't want Ukraine to be carved up without any consent. It's certainly backing Zelensky, as we're seeing by the meeting at Downing Street this morning. I mean, what sort of dynamic does that place on the meeting tomorrow?
I don't think this comes as a huge shock to the White House that Europe is fully behind Ukraine. It's obviously the conflict is taking place in Europe. It's on Europe's doorstep. So it's no surprise that Britain, along with our European partners, will be backing Ukraine to the hilt. I think the interesting dynamic will be that Mr. Zelensky will be meeting Sir Keir Starmer today ahead of the meeting, and the sort of message that it will send is we're with Ukraine, and but there has been language that's come out of the White House that's been very sceptical of Ukraine, and the message is that Europe is standing by Ukraine, and that this kind of narrative of being sceptical isn't very helpful.
OK, Tom Close, Pritchard, good to see you this morning. Thank you very much.
Right, time for the papers this morning with Deputy Editor of The Spectator, Freddy Gray, and Editor-at-Large for the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths. Good morning to you both. Can we have a look at the eye to begin with, Charlotte? And Trump preempting what is going to be happening tomorrow.
Yeah, well, Zelensky is urging Trump to be aware that Putin might be bluffing and saying basically to Trump, look, he doesn't want peace, so just watch out. Don't offer him too much. Don't promise too many things. All the minerals in the world aren't going to get you anywhere if he doesn't want peace. So that's the front page of the Eye today.
Yeah. Freddie, what do you make of it?
I think yesterday, as far as America was concerned, yesterday was very much reassure Europe that they are still relevant and part of this process. And the coalition, the willing, the sort of European pro-Ukraine alliance are still an important part of negotiations, because the Europeans are very worried that Putin and Trump are going to meet in Alaska tomorrow and just kind of carve up Europe between them, carve up Eastern Europe between them and the rest of the world, perhaps. And because they both see themselves, Putin and Trump see themselves as almost like 19th century figures. They're going to meet in Alaska, they're going to decide the future of the world together. And the Europeans are very worried about this because they feel Europe's not part of this conversation. So what the Trump administration was doing yesterday is saying, I'm not going to give Putin, an easy ride. There has to be a ceasefire. He even apparently on the phone, told European leaders that there wouldn't be any territorial concessions.
Well, that's a very big step.
Which is a very big step. But there's no... I mean, whether Trump actually said that is a moot point. That's what European leaders have said that he said. J.D. Vance also spoke, who's in the Cotswolds, as everybody now knows. He spoke to Zelensky yesterday. I think there was very much an attempt to reassure Zelensky, reassure Europe that they weren't going to turn on them. But that's because the Europeans are so worried about it.
Do you think it worked? Obviously, yesterday their aim was to put the Ukrainian stance forward, to talk about the coalition of the willing, to warn President Trump not to trust Putin. Do you think it worked?
Well, I think it did, in that Trump then came out and said, oh, by the way, we might meet with Zelensky tomorrow, as soon as tomorrow. But then he backtracked on that within a few minutes as well and said, but, if it doesn't go well, we won't meet with Zelensky. I think it's a very confusing picture, and until we get through Friday, it's just going to keep flip-flopping. There's just so much coming out so rapidly at the moment.
And what Trump likes is the fact that everybody wants to know how it's going to go down on Friday. He knows it's going to be a spectacular moment in global politics, and that's what he wants.
Yeah.